Resident Evil 4 has got to be one of the most greatest horror games of all time. It has it all from the extremely fun gameplay to the top-notch voice lines.
Where's everyone going? Bingo?
I see that the president's equipped his daughter with ballistics, too.
How rude!
No thanks, bro. Sorry, but following a lady's lead just isn't my style.
I've sent my right hand to dispose of you.
Your right hand comes off?
Everything about this game was incredible, and it was way ahead of its time, and it's still being played constantly over 20 years later. Which is probably why, after 18 years since its first initial release, they decided to release the 2023 remake. Now, reimagined with modern graphics, intense action, and a whole new level of terror, it was perfect for new and old players everywhere. You play as Leon, the man that everyone dreams to be someday. Roundhouse kicking baddies, committing random ass acts of backflips, and most importantly, showing off his incredible shooting skills to save Ashley and to get her back to safety. But what if Leon did not have a gun? What if he did not have one of the biggest key elements to his own story? What if he was just left with his wits and his hand-to-hand combat skills? Does he or could he stand a chance against the enemies to come and ultimately save the day still? So today, we'll be taking a dive into the question, can you beat Resident Evil 4 Remake without any firearms? Meaning no fancy pistols, no powerful shotguns, just ourselves with a knife and whatever else we can salvage. It is time for the rules. It is very straightforward. No firearms of any kind are allowed to be used. I am allowed to sell guns, however, for extra money from the merchant because I said so. Throwables such as grenades and eggs are completely allowed because they do not classify as a firearm in my eyes. Plus, the game would be completely impossible due to a few puzzles requiring them. Also, the game must be a completely new save file on professional because Mama ain't raised no bitch. Also, finally, Ashley's suit of armor and sunglasses are completely banned because they would just make the challenge way too easy. So with that being said, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Like all beginnings, I skip onto the cabin like every other run would go. I open up the door and enter without any permission at all. I find the person inside and introduce my foot into his face. After obtaining a key to the basement, I enter down the steps and I find myself in some type of freaky sex dungeon. After finding what I was basically looking for, I once again have to teach this man a lesson of not entering my no-no square. After my dramatic exit, I go straight to the village where we find ourselves our first metaphorical wall. So, when coming here, we have three options. Either I wait for the time limit, I kill the required amount of enemies, or I just give up and cry. Well, since I'm not a little sissy, I went for the limit. I chose this option mainly because I was metaphorically and physically getting molested by the chainsaw guy every time I looked his direction. So, running away to me was my best bet. After a few tries and many restarts, I finally hear those bells go off and watch them all leave. With them all leaving for bingo, I begin to collect everything I can. I raided that village like there was a pandemic. The shotgun was on my list of collectibles, which, spoiler alert, I'm going to sell it later and not use it because, you know, no guns, can't use them, not allowed. I soon find myself in the barn area. While here, I do a few neck inspections with my knife, get some head from a cow, and collect some jewels. Here's a fun fact, once you put the gear back into the little slot and pull the lever, you will always have just enough time to get to the end of the bridge and push the cart out of the way. After all of that, we can finally say we made it to the docks. Here's a small secret I can share with you guys. All you have to do is get to the house, nothing else needs to be done here, no one has to die. Unless you have skill issues and then the guy inside the house hits you. Other than that, once entering inside the house, you're good. Once you get inside the trapdoor, you meet up with the Big Cheese, who happily reminds Leon of the challenge that we are attempting. And that, my friends, was Chapter 1. Going on to Chapter 2 now. So far, so good. Chapter 2 begins with us waking up after our ass was promptly handed back to us. I made a realization that I had been literally robbed of all of my shit. So with a new goal in mind of obtaining all of our stuff back, and with the help of it being fueled with determination and this random ass knife and this dead guy, it should be a quite the easy stop. A few neck examinations later and a few rats terminated, not only do we gain back what we once lost, but we finally meet up with the closest thing we all had to a father, the merchant. Once I set my eyes on him, I sold everything that wasn't of value to me, like these disgusting and useless guns. But with all that selling I was doing, I was making some sweet cash right off the bat. I started investing, but unlike my uncle with the gambling addiction, I was actually making a profit. My knife was already more powerful and durable than ever before. Now that I am armed with a much stronger stabbing device, I am much better prepared to take on the valley. I thought this part would be a lot tougher, but somehow ended up completing it on my first try. I was in and out like a father out to get milk. This part just involved me running away and dodging everything I could. The first thing I did was run up the hill to turn the wheel, which was horrifying, but I somehow managed to do it well. Then I bailed it to the key and just booked it. It took some healing obviously, but I somehow managed to get through and didn't get killed somehow. For this section, it really isn't worth the time and effort killing people for what you could have. To be honest, a lot of these strategies that are going to be seen on this video are going to repeat a lot, so just be prepared for that. Speaking of which, going up the hill to the house where the chainsaw guy is, you can just run. If you run the entire way and don't stop, he will never catch you no matter what. But some advice, look out for bear traps, there's quite a bit of them. Now within the building itself, I just grabbed the key and looped the guy around the table, which allowed me to have just enough time to do the door puzzle and grab the key. If everything goes right, the guy can never catch you up the stairs, so this part's also easy. We grab the key once inside and begin our descent into the next chapter. Okay, I'm just gonna begin it like this with chapter 3. Since I am not a bastard, I saved the dog. Whoever doesn't do this, I don't care if you're a speedrunner or just an asshole. I hope you get stuck in traffic tomorrow with sudden explosive diarrhea. You always save the dog no matter what. Anyway, I backtrack a bit and collect some stuff that I missed and upgrade the knife a little bit more. Remember, almost all my money is going into it, so at this rate, it's gonna be maxed out quite soon. As I am on my way to the town hall, I get absolutely fisted and harassed by some old guy. I thankfully escape his tight grasp and book it to the town hall. Once inside, I kill the snake in the box for the spinels it can give me later, and I head straight for the church. I break the twin gravestones so I can get more spinels, and then I head behind the church for the flashbang. Here is a fact. The flashbang makes most of this challenge easier, and most importantly, possible. They are an extremely high valuable item, so I must take advantage of them at all costs. I finally arrived to the bridge, and once I get here, I avoid everyone like they're an STD. Like Ellen DeGeneres once said, just keep swimming, which I followed to an absolute T. Well, I mean, I did fail it the first time, but I nailed it the second time, so suck it. I zigzag these puppies like it's no one's business. I sell some more stuff when I get to the merchant, and I ready myself for obtaining the gas can. After thinking it through, I decide to use the flashbang while everyone enters the room as I grab it. I get cleaved by some random ass woman in front of me, but that's not enough to stop me. I get through it pretty well, and now we have to deal with the giant fish thing, which I basically just beat really easily. Nothing really changes, and there's nothing really to talk about here due to it being identical to a normal playthrough. No guns were even used because we threw harpoons, so yeah, this fight was an absolute cakewalk. And with that, we're finally on to chapter 4, which makes us a quarter of the way through. So far, so good, everybody. We are now about quarter of the way through the game, and we are still looking pretty good, honestly. However, enemies are only getting stronger from now on. The first 3 chapters were only just the warm-up rounds. Now, it starts to get real. This chapter is famously known for the introduction of the new enemy type, the Las Plagas mutation. From here on out, enemies have a chance to mutate when either getting decapitated or knocked down. While they may seem intimidating at first, they are quite easy to take out. For starters, there are 2 main ways of taking them out. The first way is just to stop the transformation altogether by stabbing them in the throat while they are down on the ground. This method works great, but isn't too helpful once they are transformed. So what do you do after that then? Well, the second way is to not only let them transform, but to use a flashbang. This will always one-shot them as long as the transformation is fully completed. This is why flashbangs are extremely useful. Not only can it stun enemies, but it can also kill the mutated ones super easily. While that was a shit ton of information that you probably didn't need to know right now, this information is going to be useful to know because a lot of my strategies coming up are going to be using it. With all that being said, we can now finally get back to the game, and once we're in, we just simply book it past the introduction of the mutated Las Plaga. There was no reason to fight him right now, and we immediately head to the boat because we have a shit ton of collectibles to get here. The main quest items here, which are Apostate's Head and Blasphemer's Head, both are needed to obtain the church insignia. Out of the 2, I decided to get the Apostate Head first because it was the more difficult one to obtain at the time. My main strategy for this entire part is just to run the whole way there, grab it and then book it out of there. There isn't really much worth here to collect anyways. My best advice for this part is not to hesitate at all. If there is an opening with an enemy, take that opportunity and just run past them. Other than that, this part is actually pretty easy. After all is said and done, I head directly to the shipwreck to obtain both the Red 9 and the Jewel. The gun is basically just free money for me to get, and the Jewel is pretty much self-explanatory. Afterwards, I head directly to the Longabass so I can get even more spinels from the merchant, and while on the same path, I go and obtain one of the most important items in the entire game, the Golden Egg. This is one of our secret weapons for a very specific occasion later on, so we must keep it at all costs. And finally, last but not least, I get Blasphemer's Head with very little effort and head back to the church insignia puzzle where I can place my heads and finally obtain my prize. Holy shit, that took a while. Once I add the church insignia into my collection, I immediately head back towards the church in order to help Ashley. However, I am stopped by a very big boy who is just itching to stop me at all costs. After getting literally curve stomped multiple times, I made the realization that I needed to awaken my inner proctologist because his weak point was the one thing giving him his power, his thick cheeks. To describe it best, I basically was giving this man a prostate exam with every swing and stab, each worse than the last. He tried to stomp me a few times, but I ran under his scrotum and rinsed and repeated. Even the dog I saved came by and helped me. This was an absolute gangbang of a fight. My knife did break eventually, which gave him and his asshole hope, but was immediately squashed away after I pulled out a second knife. So basically the strategy here is just to stab him in the rectum and dodge his stomps over and over again. After some time, blood, sweat, tears, a few broken knives, and a lot of determination, and most importantly, a lot of stabs to the butt, I find myself victorious. I thank the dog for him being a good boy, and I wish him the best of luck, and then I head right back to the merchant to make some repairs. I need to repair my knife, or else this is going to be a real shitty time. I also head back to the boat to get a little bit more fish, just so I can heal back up to full health, and I'm back on the trail to the church. Once near the church, I find myself face to face with a mutated dog, basically the bad boys of the game. I easily kind of get through them though with my sick dodging skills, and immediately headed inside. The puzzle was extremely easy, as it always is, and just like that, we find Ashley, and that's it for Chapter 4. Oh my god, that was a doozy. I'm so glad it is over, and it's finally time to move on with Chapter 5. So, beginning Chapter 5, we have some great news, and some bad news. The good news is that we finally have company in form of Ashley. The bad news is, we have Ashley. To make it short, Ashley can be extremely annoying. This can range from anything from her getting kidnapped to her even dying. This game is now an exporting mission as long as we have her, so this is gonna get way more difficult from here on out. But luckily for us, we don't really have too much of a problem with her right now. There's not really a direct quest right now where she's gonna be an issue, so we can just book it with her for now. So with that being said, we exit the church and book it directly through the graveyard, hoping that Ashley does not get kidnapped while we do that, and then we make our descent back to the village. While on our way back, I talk to the only father figure I've ever had and sell a few things for some more cash. I forgot to mention that I sold my Lunkabass a while ago and got some spinels from it. Speaking of which, I should probably address something sooner than later. I will not be covering everything I sell or jewels that I may collect. If they were a trouble to get, I will talk about it, but if they weren't a trouble at all, I won't really be covering it. I just want everyone to know that so they don't get confused on how I'm getting like a lot of money. With that being said, let's get back to the game. We make it back to the village and we notice that it has improved a lot on its security since I was last there. There are just a lot of enemies here, and to be honest with you, most of them just aren't worth killing. So I ultimately just ran past them and booked it directly to the farm gate, which had a lot of twists and turns, and a lot of hope and prayers that Ashley did not get manhandled by one of the random ass enemies. This somehow works, and we end up getting all the way to the farm gate without either of us kicking the bucket, which is extremely surprising because running and gunning this section should not have worked. But now we're at the farm part, and to be honest with you, we can just kind of skip over this because it's just us running to the other side, which is honestly pretty easy. And all we do here is we just go to the merchant, purchase a bigger suitcase, and then we're finally off to the abandoned cabin, where we meet up with our best friend forever, Luis, in which we team up with and help defend Ashley and our lives in this very cramped cabin. Oh boy, where do I begin? Well, I can begin with this. This, hands down, is one of the most hardest parts of the game and the challenge, in my opinion, hands down. There is just so much that can go wrong here. Now, this whole area is split up into 3 parts, and I will go over and discuss how I flipping did it by starting with part 1. There are 2 stories to this house, the first floor and the second floor respectively. Part 1 is mainly on the first floor. All enemies appear on the first floor for this part. They all appear from 3 separate windows. The good news is you can board up these windows and make them inaccessible to enemies so they can no longer enter through them. However, the bad news is they're somewhat rare, but you get one of them at the start. So once you grab it, use it immediately. It makes it so much easier. I actually recommend boarding up the window by the steps so you can just make an easy getaway whenever you have to. During all of this, your best friend Lewis will be shooting enemies, which is really good. He can not only kill and stun enemies, but he can also distract them, which is awesome. It is so helpful. You want to use him as much as possible, and you want to take advantage of it as much as possible as well, because he is the saving grace here. Also, I heavily recommend you learn how to parry. It makes this part much more enjoyable in my opinion. And for the love of God, take advantage of the roundhouse kicks. They save you here. Now, for the rest of part 1, that's honestly pretty much it. Other than just running around in circles and weakening enemies, I'll say that's it for part 1. Now on to part 2, which isn't that much better than part 1. In fact, if you thought part 1 was tough, then oh boy, part 2 is going to hit you like a truck. Nowhere is safe in the cabin. They flood both the first floor and the second floor at the same time. When going into this part, I highly recommend the use of flashbangs whenever you can. At this point, you should be able to make them because you could have purchased them, at least purchased the recipe to make them. The only thing I can recommend here in total is just to run around in circles and parry whenever you can. If they mutate, just throw a flash grenade and then roundhouse kick the rest. This is literally the best advice I got. Ultimately, you will get the hang of it eventually and you'll be finally blessed with the third and final part. Which is where shit can hit the metaphorical fan because now we're introduced to the Brute. These assholes basically are drunk spinjitzu masters. They just spin around in circles with a sledgehammer trying to hit you with it. They are both honestly a blessing and a curse because some fights they can just accidentally kill everything and you can dodge it at the same time. However, in later fights, Ashley is there and she can be hit by these guys, so they're not really fun to be around then. But here is a different story because we're solo and we don't have anyone to protect right now, so this is actually a good thing for us. I also recommend just killing him as fast as possible. Just use a flashbang and stab him, that should take him out pretty easily. He drops a jewel, which is completely worth it, and it stuns everyone else in the room, so I say it's a win-win in my book. And on top of that, at this point, there isn't much time left, and soon the clock strikes down, and we finally beat it. This part took me several tries, not because I'm bad at the game, even though I am, but because holy shit, no guns is actually getting very difficult. And thank God this chapter's done. And now we are finally on chapter 6, baby. Let's frickin' go. After what seemed like forever just being stuck in that cabin, we finally make it to this place what the game calls the checkpoint. I'm going to be completely honest here. This part sucked a lot at first. It had me trying a lot of different stuff, which required a lot of different strategies, and I eventually did find a good one. It's basically a method as old as time, save scumming. Basically, I would attempt to kill someone when entering the gate. I would quickly leave, save the game, and rinse and repeat until the first few enemies were dead because I needed a good exit and they kept blocking it. Plus, I only need to kill a few, not all of them, so it was a pretty good strategy, and I recommend it. And after all was said and done, I would basically book it. I obviously failed a few times because my two brain cells were basically fighting for third place for a very long time. That was until I realized that I have flashbangs, and I also figured out with a really well thrown grenade and a great flashbang as well, and a lot of hope Ashley didn't get into a bear trap, we can just book it to the exit and move on to the next challenging thing about this chapter. Obtaining the crank to the gate. Now I'm going to be honest here, I did not know how to start this part. We had very limited resources, and we just had a knife going up against enemies that could one-shot me no matter what. I was somewhat stuck here. I also realized that I couldn't really do enough damage to kill both of them reliably. But here's the thing about me, I don't give up that easily. After a few tries and a lot of yoo-hoo strawberry, I found out that this very lantern can be dropped by stabbing it. This is amazing news because the fire takes out a shit ton of their health, so it makes it so much easier to kill them. I should also mention that my strategy that I found required me to flash them at the beginning and stab both of them just to lower their health, because it helps a lot, even if it's not that much. I also decided that this would be a great time to use my grenades, because why the hell not? It took some time, but eventually I found the crank, and I do what I do best. Save scum. Yeah, I wasn't doing that shit again, sorry. If that's cheating, and if you think that's cheating, I want you to play. I want to see your ass play by these rules. Don't judge me. Anyway, I open up the gate without any casualties, and prepare myself for the big fight coming up. But first, I obviously have to do that running scene, which I nailed first try. I nailed it eventually and find myself standing in front of the very reason I wanted to try this challenge in the first place. But first I have a nice talk with the merchant with repairs and the final upgrade to my knife, making me faster than Usain Bolt when swinging. I am now ready to take on the first actual boss fight of this game, the Big Cheese.
You know that.
Oh, Almighty, grant me the strength to crush your enemies.
Son of a bitch. Ashley, run!
Okay.
Hasta luego.
God, I thank you for your gift.
Now for this fight, I had a few test runs on hardcore to even see if it was possible. I was trying many different techniques of stabbing, but it wasn't very long until I found his weakness. Thanks to my degree in proctology, I soon found his weakness to be the very thing his mother gave him. Spoiler alert, this weakness is shared with a lot of other enemies, so just remember that. But this special technique of stabbing his derriere not only allows you to stab him directly in the butt, but it allows you to dodge his grab attacks very easily. As you're giving this man a physical, he will try to grab you. Just run as soon as he attempts it. He should never catch you, as long as you're not me. Soon, unfortunately, he realizes that he must remove his weakness so he doesn't fall like the rest, and he becomes whatever the hell he is. I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't even know what this is. Now, I'm gonna be honest, this part kinda stumped me, until I found out that not only can grenades work here, but flashbangs as well. If you time it right, you can damage him with the flashbang, causing the barrel he's holding to explode. I don't know how this works, but it worked, which is amazing. While this is all going on, and if you do enough damage to him, sooner or later he will begin to panic and start to swing down to you, which will give you an amazing chance to violate him with your knife. I'm talking stabbing this guy until he becomes a little showerhead. My goal is to make this guy's new name the Swiss cheese, if you know what I'm saying. Eventually, his body just cannot sustain any more hits because there simply is no other spots to stab him. And after all that, I finally come out victorious, proving that this fight is indeed possible with just a knife. And a few grenades that were used here and there. I take his eye and book it out of that burning building, because I'll be honest with you, I don't want anything to do with it anymore. And now this is the final part of the chapter, and we head straight to the castle. Now, unfortunately, this video is quite long and has been going on for a little bit now, so I decided I will be splitting this up into 3 separate parts. One for the village, which is this one for the castle, and one for the island. It just makes it easier so this video isn't an hour long. I want to thank you all who stayed and watched. It means a lot. And if you want to see more like this, write a comment down asking about a challenge you want me to try. Just write down, I'll do it. Probably I'll do it. I'll stream it on Twitch, and yeah. Thank you all for watching. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you all later. Peace out.